Today we're covering VBA and macros in Excel. If you've ever wished Excel could just do your work for you, then you've come to the right place. Because I'm here to tell you, it can. We'll cover what VBA or a macro even is anyway, how VBA can make Excel work for you, how to record macros and understand the VBA code behind them, the basics of VBA syntax, structure, and all with tons of practical examples. Let's start with the basics. So macros are like a record and replay feature in Excel. They record your actions and let you replay them to automate repetitive tasks. VBA stands for Visual Basic for Applications and is the programming language that makes this possible within Microsoft Office programs. With VBA, you can go beyond simple recordings to write custom scripts. Before we dive in, we'll need to enable the Developer tab, which will allow this to happen. So go over to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and then check Developer in the right-hand menu and click OK. You'll then sit in this top pane here. So let's start simply by recording a macro. We'll create one to format a dataset. Imagine this is a task that you do every day when you receive this data. This will include bolding the headers, adding a border, and adjusting column widths. So here's how you do it. You go to the Developer tab, hit Record Macros, and then look, I'll go through each of these steps of bolding the headers, adding a border, and adjusting column widths. The same way that I would just normally, nothing else is different. All you need to do now is hit End. The macro is now recorded. And then test it on another dataset by running it. Just go to Developer, Macros, select what we just saved, and click Run. Excel will repeat the formatting steps for you. So let's dig into the VBA code behind this macro. Press Alt and F11 to open the VBA editor. You'll see your macro under Modules. Now let's break it down. The sub and end sub keywords define the block of code. Inside we'll have objects like rows and range, with properties like font.bold and methods like autofit. So let's write our own custom VBA script, a macro to insert the current date and time into a selected cell. Again, open the VBA editor with Alt F11, click Insert, Module, and let's write the code. After this is all written, you'll want to save the workbook as a macro-enabled workbook. This is .xlsm. What you may need to do on your desktop once it's saved, or wherever the file is located, is right-click it and then enable this in Properties. So now all that's left to do is jump into some pre-written examples and show you exactly what they do and demonstrate the power of VBA. On the screen here I have 5 practical examples that I want to run through with you today. Now each of these I've assigned a button to, which is something we didn't cover in the previous half. What you're able to do is if you head to the Developer tab, now if I press macros you'll see all of them saved here. But you can assign them to a button. Say for example the first macro I want to show you, created in VBA, is that when you press button 1, it pops up with this text here saying, "Hello and welcome to this VBA tutorial." Now all I have to do here is go to Insert, select this option here, and draw a button. And then I can assign it to any of these values. So let's say this one here, I want to do that. Now let's click it, and there you go. Now if I hold Control and click, I'll then be able to move it around. In fact, if I click here, I can change the title as well, and I can Control click and then delete. So that is the very first button. Now rushing through these examples before we look at the underlying VBA, there's button 2. If we press this, it will fill that first cell in A1 with "This is a test." Now you can imagine you could assign a macro created using VBA to do any number of things, and these are just some demonstrations. For example, button 3 will then sum the values from A1 to A5, which here is 0. But let's say I added 5, 5, 5, 5, and 5, and then I hit button 3, the value is 25, or 5 times 5. Button 4 is another handy shortcut. What it actually does is if I put something in here, you'll note in sheet 2, there's nothing there. But let's say I fill this in with my name, and then your name, which we'll just put as viewer, and then I hit button 4. It doesn't just select it, it actually selected it and then copied it to another specific sheet. That saved me a lot of time. So let's delete that. In fact, if I hit it again, it'll then copy nothing to the following sheet. Finally, we've got another one similar to that pop-up in button 1, except this time it's doing a calculation behind the scenes. So it's saying type in today's date in month, day, year format. So I know the month is the 12th, the day is the 17th, and the year is 2024. So if I hit OK, what it will actually do is it'll tell me, look, today is a Tuesday. And that's really helpful. Now that we've done that, let's look behind the scenes at the VBA. So if I right click this button, you can see I can assign it a macro. But how do I edit the macros? Well, same as before, you can either do F11, or you can go over here and hit macros and then edit. The other way to do it, just so I'm clear with everything, is actually just clicking this Visual Basic button up here. Now, here are all the modules I've created within this worksheet. And remember, I've saved it as an XLSM file, and I enabled it in properties as well. So let's look through each of these. I have 1, 2, I can just double click, 3, 4, 5. Now, I created a few of them. I only used 5. But number 1, this is the show message box. Again, we go sub and end sub as well. Now, all I did is very simply within this block of code, which I've called show message box, that is the name of the macro, and we can see that here as well. See, it's called show message box. We then say what we want to do. So I'm calling message box, and then very simply inside quotation marks, just saying whatever it is that I want to say. So I could say subscribe to Toby's Data Digest. Save this with Control S. Now, if it's the first time you're saving a macro, it'll actually ask you to save the workbook as an XLSM file. We've already done that, so we'll just hit exit. Now when we run this, it will say subscribe to Toby's Data Digest. Brilliant. Let's head back over to macros and take a look at that copy data one. Again, we do sub and end sub. We call the macro copy data, and you'll see if you look at both of these, a little bit of a pattern emerging. After sub and then the name of the macro, we do this open and close brackets, and then we actually indent the next lines before ending the sub. So what we've done here in this sum range one, it's using some various functions within the worksheet, such as .sum, and specifically this range here in the quotation marks. And then again, we pop back up with that message saying, look, the sum has been done, it's on these values. You don't have to do that, but say if we took that away, it then wouldn't tell us what the result is. We could even put it into a cell. So let's take a look at this in another example that I fill the value of A1 with this as a test. Let's take that here and then go there. Now I'm going to hit enter and just paste that in. So what I want to do is range A1. I want the value to be the sum result. So let's delete this. And now let's save it. If I then call that macro, so here it is, it was the sum range, and I hit run, it'll pop up there rather than the text box. You can see how easy this can be to then play around with. Let's try that again. Let's go to sum range and run, and it's now filled in it. Fantastic. So continuing on here. What if we wanted to look at something like copying data? How do you think that might look? Well, we do sum, copy data, and then those curly brackets. We indent the following lines. We say sheet 1, looking at the range, A1 to A5, dot copy. And then the destination is sheet 2, range A1, end sub. It's as easy as that. Now there's a few elements you have to recall with the syntax, like this here. However, what I will say is that stuff like ChatGPT, these AI are incredible at writing macros for you. You can get them to send out emails that connect to your Outlook outbox. It's fantastic. So let's give that an example here. If I go to insert module, and here's my module, and I want to do something and I want to call it sub, let's say calculation. And I want to then end sub. You see, the moment I hit enter, it will automatically write that for me. I know from the previous examples that I want to hit tab, and what I'll do here is I'll begin to write something out. Now, if I want to leave a comment in this code, I'll just put a little quotation mark, a singular one there. That means anything that I type after the fact won't be considered a line of executable script. So let's say I want to add the numbers 10 and 15 together and present the result in cell A1. Now I can save this and you'll see the line becomes green. If I then run it, and again I've called this calculation, let's find that here. There we go, run, nothing will happen. And that's because I didn't actually write any code. Remember, it was just a comment. So let's go back to Visual Basic and find this here. What I could do is go to ChatGPT. So let's copy this here and then go there now. Let's say I have this VBA example, make it work. And let's hit enter. What it should do for us is then go, oh, okay, well, here's the subroutine and here's exactly how it will work. So we can copy this calculation and then put it straight into here, hitting Control and S. What I will say is I'd never recommend just blindly putting something in and running it. You don't know what it's doing behind the scenes and you want to spend a bit of time to understand it. Now to us this makes good sense. We've done sub the name, we've ended the sub, these are all indented, fantastic. We've got a comment here, we actually want that to be in there because it's going to explain to us later when we're reviewing it how it works. Now what it's doing here is it says that it wants the result to be an integer, a whole number. Now result is just 10 plus 15. And again, the value of A1 is result. So let's run this here. You'll note I already have values in cell A1, and that's okay. So if I go to macros and then I run calculation, it will overwrite that with 25. What I'll finish with is debug. Let's say I do this debug button here. What I'm able to do is compile the project. And nothing happened. But say there was an issue, like I took away the word dim here, and then I debugged it, and I compile the project again. Let's just hit enter and compile the project. It'll say there's an error on that line, and it'll give you a little bit of information which will help you in debugging it. Now, thank you very much for watching, and all the best.